2:17 a.m. That's the timestamp burning in the corner of Ethan Vale's phone as the live camera feed loads, stutters, then clears. His mother's room appears, dim, silvered by moonlight, everything perfectly arranged the way the nurses insist it should be. The motorized bed, the oxygen concentrator's steady whisper, the little lamp shaped like a flower that never gets turned on anymore. And then the maid steps into frame. Lena moves like she knows she's being watched. Not hurried, not nervous. Like this is routine. She closes the door with 2 fingers, turns the lock, and slips a key back into her apron pocket. Ethan's thumb tightens around the phone. Because that key, only family has that key. Lena crosses to the bedside and leans close to Margaret Vale's face. The old woman's eyes are open, glossy in the dark, paralyzed from the neck down after the stroke, her body still as a mannequin, her voice gone, her expression trapped behind a mask of stillness. Lena looks straight into those eyes and whispers something Ethan can't hear. Then she reaches into her apron and pulls out a small vial. Not a pill bottle from a medicine cart, not the labeled packets the nurse sets out. A vial. She tips a few drops onto a spoon, presses it to Margaret's lips, and holds it there until Margaret swallows. Ethan's heart seems to tilt. Lena's hand moves again, down to the side of the bed, under the blanket, right where the emergency call button is supposed to be. She unplugs it. The oxygen concentrator hums on. The monitor still blinks. But the one thing Margaret can use to call for help gone. Lena straightens, smooths her apron, and walks to the dresser. She opens the top drawer. Inside is Margaret's jewelry box. Ethan knows exactly what's in there because he bought half of it. A diamond bracelet from Paris, a pearl brooch shaped like a swan, a ring Ethan's father gave Margaret on their 20th anniversary. Lena lifts the box like it weighs nothing. Then she opens the second drawer. A folder sits there. Manila, thick, edges worn like someone has handled it too many times. It doesn't belong there. Lena pulls it out and slides it into her apron, the papers bending against her waist. And then, like a final insult, she leans down and presses her forehead to Margaret's. Not a kiss. Not comfort. A gesture that looks almost intimate. Possessive. Margaret's eyes blink twice, hard and fast. Ethan's blood turns cold. Because it doesn't look like fear. It looks like a warning. The story everyone thinks they're watching is simple. A millionaire who didn't trust strangers, so he had cameras to protect his helpless mother. But what Ethan is about to see, what that feed is about to drag into the open, won't just ruin someone's job. By morning, it will put a family name on the front page for all the wrong reasons. And the person who ends up in handcuffs won't be the one Ethan is staring at right now. Ethan Vale's house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a museum designed by someone who hated fingerprints. The marble floors were so polished you could see yourself in them, jaw clenched, eyes tired, suit jacket still on, because you never really stopped working. The air was always cool, filtered through vents hidden behind decorative slats, carrying that faint, clean scent of money. Lemon oil on wood, expensive candles no one lit, and something sharper underneath from the medical wing. Antiseptic, latex, sterile plastic. Even the silence sounded expensive. No neighbors, no street noise, just the low mechanical breathing of machines, keeping Margaret Vale comfortable, and the occasional soft click of a motor adjusting her bed. Ethan built this place to be controlled. He built a company the same way. Clean systems, strong walls, no surprises. He liked numbers because numbers didn't lie. He liked code because code did exactly what you told it to do. People were different. People smiled while they reached into your pockets. That's why the cameras were there. They weren't obvious. That would defeat the purpose. They were tucked into smoke detectors, hidden in the corners of picture frames, disguised inside a small clock on the mantel. Ethan installed them himself over 3 nights, running cables through the walls like he was wiring up a server room, not his mother's bedroom. He told himself it was love. He told himself it was protection. But there was another reason that sat behind his ribs like a stone. Guilt. Because Margaret's stroke happened on a Tuesday afternoon, and Ethan had been on a private jet, signing papers in Chicago, when his mother fell in her own kitchen and hit the tile. He'd watched the security footage afterward, not from hidden cameras. Those came later. but from the front door system he'd installed years ago to keep solicitors out. He watched his mother's body collapse like a marionette with strings cut. He watched her hand twitch, searching for something that wasn't there. He watched the minutes pass before anyone came. That footage replayed in his mind at odd moments, in board meetings, in elevators, in the back of sleek cars, while assistants asked him questions he couldn't hear. So he bought her the best neurologists, the best physical therapists, the best machines. He built her a wing in the house with soft lighting and quiet walls. And he hid cameras like prayers. On paper, Margaret Vale was safe. Her care team was vetted. The nurse agency was reputable. The medications were in locked drawers. The staff signed NDAs thicker than a novel. But Ethan didn't believe in paper. He believed in proof. He believed in watching. And that belief had rules. Rule 1. No one was alone with his mother without being seen. Rule 2. Every medication administered had to match the schedule on the app. Rule 3. If anyone stepped out of line, they were gone before they could blink. It was a harsh way to love someone, but harsh was the only language Ethan trusted. The staff understood that. They moved like shadows, quiet and efficient. They didn't laugh too loudly. They didn't ask Margaret questions that could make her feel small. They didn't call Ethan unless it was necessary. His mother's regular nurse, Jeanette, was a calm woman in her 40s who smelled faintly of peppermint gum and always kept her hair tight in a bun. She gave Ethan updates like bullet points. Blood pressure stable. Intake good. No bed sores. Speech therapy at 10. Physical therapy at 2. Then there was Dr. Harlan Kess, the private physician Ethan hired after the hospital discharge. Kess had silver hair and a soft voice that sounded like confidence. He carried a leather bag even though most of his work was digital, and he always called Margaret Maggie, like he'd earned it. "You're doing wonderfully," he'd tell her, leaning close, like she could answer. Ethan watched that too. The way Kess touched his mother's wrist longer than necessary. The way he spoke over her, as if her silence gave him permission. Ethan had asked Jeanette once, "Do you trust him?" Jeanette's smile had been polite. Too polite. "He's a good doctor," she'd said. Not yes. Not no. Just good. Ethan filed it away. He filed everything away. The maid had been the one area he hadn't obsessed over, until the last maid vanished. Her name was Clarice. She'd worked 3 months. Quiet, timid, always nervous around Ethan. Then one Friday morning, she didn't show up. Her phone went dead. The agency swore they hadn't reassigned her. Ethan's security team couldn't find her, and the police treated it like an adult who chose to disappear. Ethan told himself it was none of his business. But that night he found Clarice's employee badge in the trash, cut in half. After that, he stopped trusting reputable. He started trusting his own eyes. Lena Reyes arrived the following Monday. She was younger than Ethan expected, late 20s maybe, with dark hair pulled into a low braid and hands that looked used to work. Not delicate, not polished, practical. She wore no jewelry, no perfume, just clean soap and fabric softener. She didn't fawn over the mansion the way some hires did. She didn't gasp at the art on the walls or the grand piano no one played. Her eyes swept the space like she was mapping exits. She spoke with a slight accent Ethan couldn't place at first, soft vowels, careful consonants. "You have cameras," she said the first time Ethan met her. It wasn't a question. It was an observation. Ethan paused, studying her. "Why do you think that?" She shrugged once. People with money hide fears in technology. Jeanette coughed like she wanted to laugh, but didn't dare. Ethan didn't smile. "We protect what matters." Lena nodded. "Then we understand each other." It was an odd thing to say to a man who could fire you with a gesture. It wasn't defiant. It wasn't flattering. It was calm. Ethan should have seen that as a warning. Instead, he saw competence. In the first week, Lena learned Margaret's routine like it was a language. She adjusted pillows without being asked. She knew how to lift Margaret without making her shoulders ache. She noticed the slight tightening around Margaret's eyes when the room got too cold, and she lowered the vent without speaking. One afternoon, Ethan watched from his office upstairs as Lena sat beside Margaret and read aloud from a book, an old paperback with creased pages. Not a glossy magazine. Not a tablet. A worn book. Ethan muted his video call and listened. Lena's voice was low, steady. Not theatrical. Just present. She read like she believed the words mattered, even if Margaret couldn't respond. Margaret blinked slowly, and Lena paused. "What is it?" Lena asked, leaning closer. "Too fast." Margaret blinked twice. Lena nodded. "Okay. Slower." Ethan's chest tightened with something he didn't like. Not jealousy exactly. Something sharper. Because he realized Lena was treating his mother like she could still make choices. Ethan didn't know when he stopped doing that. He told himself Lena was a good hire. He told himself she made the house calmer. He even told himself he might finally sleep. Then the night of the vial happened. Ethan stared at the phone until his eyes burned, replaying the footage, rewinding, watching Lena's fingers unplug the call button again and again. His breath came shallow. He didn't scream. He didn't throw the phone. He didn't do anything dramatic. He stood up from the leather chair in his office so fast it scraped the floor, and the sound felt like a gunshot in the quiet. He was already moving before he consciously decided to. He grabbed his keys. His jaw was locked so tight his teeth ached. He stepped into the hallway and passed a framed photo of himself and Margaret at his graduation, her arm around him, laughing alive. He walked past it like it was someone else's mother. Downstairs, the house was dark except for security lights along the baseboards. His feet made soft thuds on the carpet runner. The air smelled faintly of the dinner he hadn't eaten, roasted garlic and herbs lingering from the chef's earlier shift. At the end of the hall was Margaret's wing. 2 security guards sat in the adjoining lounge, eyes on their screens. One of them looked up, startled. "Mr. Vale." Ethan didn't slow. "Where's Jeanette?" "Home. Shift ended at 10. "And the doctor?" The guard blinked. "Dr. Kess left at 8, sir." Ethan's hand was already on the door handle to Margaret's room. He pushed inside. The room was dim. The oxygen concentrator hummed. The monitor blinked green. A faint lavender scent came from the diffuser. Jeanette insisted, reduced anxiety, even though Margaret couldn't tell anyone if she liked lavender. Margaret lay on the bed, eyes open, and Lena sat in the corner chair, hands folded in her lap, like she'd been waiting. She didn't jump. She didn't flinch. She looked up at Ethan with the same calm she'd had since day one. Ethan's voice came out low and dangerous. "Get away from her." Lena didn't move. Ethan took 2 steps forward, and only then did he notice the unplugged call button, tucked behind the bed frame like someone hid it. His hand shook as he pointed. "What is that?" Lena's eyes flicked to it, then back to Ethan. "It makes noise. It calls for help." "It calls for attention," Lena said. "Not help." Ethan laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You think you get to decide that?" Lena rose slowly, keeping her hands visible. "You're angry. You should be. But don't touch her until you listen." Ethan's nostrils flared. "I listened to the cameras." Lena's mouth tightened, just for a second. Then you saw half. Ethan stepped closer until he was between Lena and the bed. He looked down at his mother. Margaret's eyes were fixed on him. Wide. Shiny. Her breathing was steady. No distress. But she blinked fast twice. Then again twice. Ethan's throat tightened. "Mom," he said, softer now, as if she might hear the softness. "Are you okay?" Margaret blinked once. Ethan exhaled. Relief hit him like a wave. Then anger surged again, because relief didn't erase what he saw. He looked at Lena. "What did you give her?" Lena didn't glance away. "Something she asked for." "She can't ask," Ethan snapped. "She can't talk." Lena's voice remained steady. "She can communicate." Ethan's laugh came again, bitter. "Don't play games with me." Lena walked to the bedside, slow enough that Ethan could stop her if he wanted. She stopped just short of touching Margaret, and looked at Ethan like she was choosing her next words carefully. "Your mother has been blinking at people for months," Lena said. "Most don't notice. Some notice and pretend they didn't." Ethan's stomach turned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying she's not a statue," Lena replied. "She's a person trapped in a body. And your cameras don't show you everything, because you don't know how to watch her." Ethan's hands curled into fists. You unplugged her call button. Lena's jaw set, because the last time she pressed it, the nurse came and gave her something that made her eyes go empty for hours. Ethan froze. The air in the room felt suddenly thinner. What did you just say? Lena reached into her apron and pulled out the vial. She held it up between two fingers. It's not poison, she said. It's ginger extract. A few drops. It helps with nausea. She's been choking on the taste of the medication. She can't spit it out. So she gets sick. I found this in the kitchen, and she blinked yes when I asked if she wanted it. Ethan's eyes flicked from the vial to his mother. Margaret's gaze didn't waver. Lena continued, voice low. She wanted you to see the folder. Ethan's head snapped toward Lena. What folder? Lena hesitated just a fraction too long, and Ethan saw it. Fear. Not of him. Of something else. Ethan's voice dropped. What did you take from her drawer? Lena's hands lowered, still holding the vial. Paper that shouldn't be in there. Ethan's pulse hammered. You stole from my mother. Lena's eyes flashed. I took evidence. Ethan's skin prickled. Evidence of what? Lena's gaze flicked to Margaret, then back. Of someone trying to steal her life while you watched spreadsheets. Ethan stepped closer, towering over her. You think you can walk into my house and accuse my staff, my doctor, of theft? Lena's lips parted, then closed again. She swallowed, and in that moment Ethan saw something else in her face. Not confidence. Resolve. Like she'd been preparing for this confrontation. You hired cameras because you're afraid, Lena said softly. Good. Be afraid. Just don't be blind. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Show me. Lena's shoulders rose with a slow inhale. Then she reached into her apron and pulled out the manila folder. She placed it on the bedside table like it might explode. Ethan didn't touch it right away. His eyes were on Lena. If this is some kind of scam. It's not, Lena said. Read. Ethan opened the folder. Inside were copies of documents, legal forms, bank authorization pages, a medical consent order, and a typed letter with the signature at the bottom. Margaret Vale's signature. Except Ethan knew his mother's signature. He'd seen it on birthday cards, on school permission slips, on letters she wrote to him in college. This signature looked like someone traced it with a trembling hand. Ethan's mouth went dry. What is this? Lena pointed at the top page. Power of attorney revision. Filed last week. Ethan stared, disbelief rising like bile. That's impossible. I'm her power of attorney. Lena's eyes were hard now. Someone is trying to become it. Ethan flipped pages, hand suddenly clumsy. There were transfer requests, asset liquidation forms, a proposed medical guardianship petition. His vision tunneled. This, Ethan whispered. This can't be real. Lena leaned closer, voice low. Look at the witness names. Ethan's eyes tracked down the page. Witness, Jeanette A. Holloway. Physician sign-off, Harlan Kess, M.D. Ethan's throat tightened until he could barely breathe. He looked up, fury and confusion crashing together. Why would they do this? Lena's gaze flicked toward the ceiling, toward the camera Ethan knew was hidden in the smoke detector. Because she can't tell you no, Lena said. And because you keep thinking the danger is the maid. Ethan stood there, the papers shaking in his hands, and he realized something that made his stomach drop. If Lena was telling the truth, then the cameras weren't protecting Margaret. They were just recording her being robbed in silence. And if Lena wasn't telling the truth, then Ethan had just let a stranger hold his mother's life in her hands. Ethan's mind moved fast, searching for the safe option. Fire Lena. Call his lawyer. Lock everything down. The safe choice was clean. It was what he always did. But it would also mean sending Lena away with whatever she knew, or whatever she was, and leaving Jeanette and Dr. Kess near his mother without question. And if the documents were real, every hour mattered. Ethan looked down at Margaret again. Her eyes were on him, and in them he saw something he hadn't seen in months. Urgency. She blinked twice, then once, then twice again. Ethan stared, confused. Lena spoke quietly. She's trying to tell you something. Ethan's mouth felt numb. How do you know what that means? Lena's voice softened, almost against her will. Because I asked her to blink for yes and not blink for no. And then we built from there. Slowly. Like teaching someone to walk again. Ethan swallowed hard. What is she saying? Lena nodded toward the bedside table drawer. Open it. Ethan hesitated. Then he slid the drawer open. Inside was a small notepad Ethan had never seen, and beside it a pen with a thick grip attachment, an adaptive tool. On the notepad, in shaky block letters, were 3 words. Not sleeping. Not safe. Ethan's breath caught. He looked at his mother's face, and for the first time in a long time, he saw past the stillness. Her eyelids trembled slightly. Like holding them open took effort. A tiny muscle in her jaw quivered. Not random. Controlled. She'd been fighting. In silence. Ethan felt something crack inside him. He turned to Lena. Why didn't you come to me? Lena's laugh was bitter and quiet. I did. Not with words. With patterns. With questions. But you don't see people. You see threats. Ethan's jaw flexed. I saw you unplug her call button. And you ran in like a hero, Lena said. Good. Now be one. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket. An alert from his finance app. He pulled it out, almost automatically. A notification flashed. Transfer request pending. $2 million. His blood went cold. That money was from Margaret's personal trust account. An account Ethan couldn't access without her legal consent. Ethan stared at the screen. Somebody was moving. Right now. He looked up at Lena, at his mother, at the papers. The old world, where Margaret's care was controlled, where Ethan's systems kept danger out, was gone. Something had already slipped past the walls. Ethan's mind sharpened into a single line. Okay, he said, voice low. Okay. We do this carefully. Lena held his gaze. Carefully is how they win. Ethan's nostrils flared. Then we do it smart. He moved to the door and called for security. 2 guards appeared instantly. Lock this wing down, Ethan said. No one in or out except me. The guard hesitated. Sir, Dr. Kess has clearance. Not anymore, Ethan snapped. Change the codes. Now. As the guards moved, Ethan turned to Lena. You stay here. You don't leave her side. Lena's eyes narrowed. You're not firing me. Not yet, Ethan said. Because if you're lying, I want you where I can see you. Lena's mouth tightened. And if I'm telling the truth? Ethan's gaze flicked to his mother. Margaret blinked once, slow. Ethan's voice softened a fraction. Then you're the only reason I'm not already too late. He stepped into the hallway. Phone pressed to his ear as he called his bank's private line. Freeze any outgoing transfers from Margaret Vale's trust, he said when the executive answered. Immediately. There was a pause. Mr. Vale, we'll need authorization. You have it, Ethan said. I'm sending you a recorded directive. If you don't freeze it, I will pull every account from your institution before sunrise. Silence. Then, understood. Ethan ended the call and leaned against the wall for a second, breathing hard. His house suddenly felt too big. Too many doors. Too many corners. Too many people with smiles and access. He opened his camera app and switched between feeds. Kitchen, hallway, nurse station driveway. Everything looked normal. That's what scared him, because normal was exactly how theft happened. Ethan's mind went to Clarice, the maid who vanished. The cut badge. The trash. His skin prickled. He'd assumed she quit. What if she tried to tell someone? What if she saw something and got scared? What if she didn't leave by choice? Ethan pushed off the wall and walked fast to the security lounge. Pull footage from 3 months ago, he told the tech. Clarice's last day. Every camera. Every hallway. Every exit. The tech blinked. That's a lot of data, sir. Do it, Ethan said. Now. His phone buzzed again. Another notification. Email received. Petition for medical guardianship hearing. Ethan's eyes narrowed. The email was from a legal office he recognized. Victor Sloan and Associates. Victor Sloan was his mother's longtime attorney. Ethan's hands went cold. He opened the email. A hearing date was set. Tomorrow morning. Ethan's stomach dropped. They weren't waiting weeks. They weren't easing into it. They were moving like someone who knew the clock was ticking. Ethan's mind flashed to Margaret's eyes in the dark. The urgent blinks. The words on the notepad. Not safe. The next hour felt like a blur of sharp decisions. Ethan called his own attorney, a woman named Priya Desai, who never smiled in court and never lost emotion when she cared enough to fight. "Priya," Ethan said the second she answered, "I need you at my house tonight." There was a pause. Then the tone of her voice shifted from casual to steel. "What's happened?" "Someone filed to take guardianship of my mother," Ethan said, "and there are documents that look forged." Priya didn't gasp. She didn't dramatize. She just asked, "Who signed?" Ethan swallowed. "Dr. Kess. Jeanette. Victor Sloan." Priya's exhale was slow. "Don't touch anything. Don't confront anyone yet. Preserve evidence." "I already confronted the maid," Ethan said. Another pause. "And," Ethan's jaw flexed, "she's the one who showed me." Priya was quiet for a beat. "Okay," she said finally. "Then you have a witness. Keep her close. And Ethan, this is bigger than you think." Ethan stared at the hallway cameras on the monitor, watching empty carpet, silent doors. He felt something settle in his chest. Not fear. Focus. "If you're hooked into this already," he murmured, more to himself than anyone, "hit subscribe and stay with us, because the next few hours get messy." Priya arrived 30 minutes later with a laptop and a portable scanner. She didn't waste time on greetings. She walked into Margaret's wing like she owned it. Margaret's eyes followed her. Priya's gaze flicked to Lena. "You're the maid." Lena's posture straightened. "Yes." Priya looked at Ethan. "And you trust her?" Ethan's voice was tight. "I don't know." Priya nodded like that was the only honest answer. She stepped to Margaret's bedside, lowered herself so her face was level with Margaret's, and spoke gently. "Mrs. Vale," Priya said. "I'm Priya Desai. Ethan hired me. I need to know if you understand me." Margaret blinked once. Priya nodded. "Good. If you want me to stop talking, blink twice." Margaret didn't blink. Priya continued, voice calm. "If someone has been trying to take control of your affairs, I need you to tell me yes or no. Can you do that?" Margaret blinked once. Ethan watched, throat tight. Priya turned slightly to Ethan. "She's alert. This is not a woman who should be signed over like furniture." Lena's eyes flicked away, as if hearing that out loud hurt. Priya scanned the documents, photographing every signature, every stamp, every witness line. She asked Ethan to pull bank logs. She asked him to export camera backups to an external drive. The house became a quiet war room. But war has a way of making people reveal themselves. At 3:15 a.m., Jeanette arrived. Ethan saw her in the driveway camera first. Her car pulled in too smoothly, like she wasn't rushing. She got out in scrubs, hair in her usual bun. Carrying her tote bag like this was a normal shift. Ethan's stomach tightened. He hadn't called her. No one had, which meant someone else did. He moved to the front entry, Priya behind him, Lena standing in the hallway near Margaret's door like a guard. Jeanette stepped inside and smiled when she saw Ethan, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Vale," she said softly. "Everything okay?" "Dr. Kess said there was a concern." Ethan stared at her. "He called you?" Jeanette hesitated half a second. "Yes," he said. "The monitor reported." "The monitor didn't report anything," Ethan said. "I did, because I saw you on paperwork you didn't tell me about." Jeanette's face didn't crumple. She didn't look guilty the way innocent people do when accused. She looked annoyed. "Mr. Vale," she said, voice smoothing out. "I've been caring for your mother for months. I'm on her side." Priya stepped forward. "Then you won't mind explaining why your name is on a power of attorney revision filed last week." Jeanette's eyes flicked to Priya. "And you are?" "Counsel," Priya said. Jeanette's lips pressed together. "This is unnecessary drama." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Tell me the truth." Jeanette sighed like Ethan was a child. "Your mother needs consistent medical decisions," she said. "You're busy. You're always busy. She needs someone local, someone stable. Dr. Kess and Mr. Sloan have been concerned for a while." Ethan's voice sharpened. "Concerned enough to forge her signature?" Jeanette's eyes narrowed. "Forge? No. We witnessed her consent. Ethan felt his pulse spike. She can't sign. Jeanette's gaze slid toward Margaret's wing. There are ways. Lena's voice cut through the hallway, low and dangerous. There are ways to lie too. Jeanette's head snapped toward Lena. You, she hissed. You were told not to interfere. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Told by who? Jeanette's mouth tightened. Priya stepped closer. Jeanette, if you have nothing to hide, you won't mind waiting while we contact Adult Protective Services and the Police Financial Crimes Unit. Jeanette's smile returned thin. Calling the police will stress your mother, she said. Is that what you want? Ethan's stomach clenched, because it sounded like concern, but it felt like a threat. He forced his voice steady. You're not going near her tonight. Jeanette's eyes hardened. You can't stop me from doing my job. I can, Ethan said. You're terminated. Jeanette's lips parted in shock, then tightened into anger. You can't. Ethan cut her off. Security will escort you off the property. Jeanette's gaze flicked past Ethan's shoulder, toward the ceiling, toward the camera she might not have known about but suddenly suspected. She looked back at Ethan, and her voice softened again, honeyed. You're making a mistake, she said. You think you're the only one with leverage here. Ethan's blood chilled. What does that mean? Jeanette lifted her chin. Ask Dr. Kess. He'll explain what happens when people panic. Then she turned and walked out with a calmness that didn't match someone fired at 3 a.m. Ethan stood there, heart pounding. Priya's voice was low. That was not a nurse trying to help. Ethan's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't an email. It was a call. Dr. Harlan Kess. Ethan stared at the screen like it was a snake. He answered. Kess's voice was calm, almost soothing. Ethan, I heard you've had an incident. Ethan's jaw locked. Why did you file guardianship paperwork behind my back? Kess sighed, like he hated having to deal with Ethan's emotions. Because your mother's care is being compromised. Ethan's eyes narrowed. By who? Kess's tone didn't shift. By your maid. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Don't lie. Kess's voice softened. Ethan, I know you love your mother. But love makes people blind. Lena Reyes has a history. Ethan's stomach dropped. What kind of history? Kess paused, just long enough to make it feel deliberate. Neglect, Kess said. An incident at a previous care facility. She left a patient unattended. The patient fell. Lena's eyes snapped to Ethan from down the hall, as if she could hear the words through the phone. Ethan's grip tightened. That's not true. Kess's voice remained smooth. It's in her file. I warned the agency. But you hired her anyway. Ethan's mind raced. He hadn't seen a file like that. Why tell me now? Ethan demanded. Because tonight, Kess said quietly. Your mother's condition worsened. Jeanette called me. She said Lena unplugged the emergency call button. That's abuse. Ethan's skin prickled. Kess was building a story. A clean one. Ethan's voice turned cold. You're not stepping foot in this house again until I know what's going on. Kess's tone tightened slightly, the first crack. You don't understand the legal situation, Ethan. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Explain it. Kess sighed. If the guardianship petition is granted, you won't be able to override medical decisions. And if a court believes your mother is being abused in your care, you may lose access entirely. Ethan's mouth went dry. Kess continued, almost gentle. I'm trying to protect you too. Ethan's laugh was sharp. Protect me from what? From my own mother. There was a pause. Then Kess said softly, from what your mother might say if she could. Ethan's blood went ice cold. He stared at the dark hallway, at the door to Margaret's room. Say that again, Ethan whispered. Kess's voice was silk. Good night, Ethan. I'll see you in court. The line went dead. Ethan stood there, phone in hand, and realized the threat wasn't just about money. It was about control. Someone was desperate to keep Margaret silent. At dawn, Ethan sat in the security lounge with the tech, watching footage from Clarice's last day. The screen showed Clarice in the kitchen, wiping counters, glancing nervously toward the hall. Jeanette walked in, spoke to her briefly, then handed her a sealed envelope. Clarice's shoulders hunched. She nodded quickly, tucked the envelope into her pocket, and walked out the back door. Ethan leaned forward. Follow her. The tech fast-forwarded. The driveway camera showed Clarice crossing the lawn toward the staff gate. Then, another figure stepped into frame. A man in a dark jacket. Baseball cap low. Not security. Not staff. He intercepted Clarice. They spoke. Clarice shook her head, visibly panicked. The man grabbed her elbow. Clarice dropped her bag. Papers spilled. The man scooped them up, shoved them back into the bag, and guided her off camera. Ethan's throat tightened. Zoom, Ethan said. The tech zoomed in, enhancing grainy details. The man's face was partially obscured, but as he turned slightly, the light caught a familiar profile. Ethan's breath stopped. It was Victor Sloan, his mother's attorney. Ethan's mind raced back through months of polite meetings with Victor, gray suit, friendly laugh, always saying, "Your mother is fortunate to have you." Fortunate. Ethan had believed it. Now, on the screen, Victor Sloan was dragging a terrified maid out of Ethan's property like she was disposable. Ethan's hands curled into fists. Priya, who had arrived again before sunrise, watched over Ethan's shoulder. "That," she said softly, "is obstruction at minimum." Ethan's voice came out rough. "Where did he take her?" The camera didn't show beyond the gate. Ethan stared at the empty space on screen, rage rising. Lena stood in the doorway, having watched enough to understand without being told. Her face was tight, controlled. "That's why she disappeared," Lena said quietly. Ethan looked at her. "You knew about Clarice?" Lena shook her head. "I suspected. People don't vanish for no reason. And the way the staff talks about her, they don't talk like someone quit. They talk like someone got erased." Ethan swallowed hard. "Why are you here, Lena?" Lena's eyes flicked to Margaret's wing. "Because your mother asked for help," she said. Ethan's jaw flexed. "How?" Lena hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny folded piece of paper. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" Lena unfolded it carefully. Inside was a small card with letters and numbers written in neat columns. A blink code. A simple system. 1 blink for row, 2 blinks for column. Like a child's cipher. Ethan stared at it, stunned. "You made this," Ethan whispered. Lena nodded once. "With her?" Ethan's throat tightened. "When?" Lena's voice softened. "While you were in meetings." The words weren't an accusation. They didn't have to be. Ethan felt something sharp behind his eyes. He stood abruptly. "Okay," he said, voice hard. "We're going to court." Priya's gaze sharpened. "We need proof that Margaret didn't consent." Ethan nodded. "We have her. We have the code. We have the camera footage of Victor." Priya's voice was cautious. "Ethan, a judge might argue she's being influenced. They'll say the maid coached her. They'll say you're manipulating your mother because you control the house." Ethan's chest tightened. "Then what do we do?" Priya's eyes narrowed. "We make her speak in a way no one can dispute." Ethan stared. "She can't talk." Priya's gaze flicked to the medical equipment in Margaret's room. "She can communicate," she said. "We just need a method recognized as reliable. Eye tracking. A speech-generating device. Something documented." Ethan's mind raced. He had money. He could buy devices. He could hire experts. But time. The hearing was in hours. At 8 a.m., Dr. Kess arrived anyway. Ethan saw his car pull into the driveway on camera, smooth and confident. Kess walked up to the front door like he belonged there. He didn't ring. He used his access code. The keypad beeped green. Ethan's blood surged. He stormed to the entry as Kess stepped inside, still in his crisp coat, leather bag in hand, face calm. "Ethan," Kess said gently, as if they were friends. "I'm here for Margaret." Ethan stepped close, voice low and dangerous. "You don't have access anymore." Kess's expression didn't change. "You can't revoke medical access with emotion." Priya stepped into view. "He can revoke entry to his home," she said. "And he has." Kess's eyes flicked to Priya, then back to Ethan, the faintest irritation showing. "This is a bad idea," Kess said. "Margaret needs stability." Ethan's jaw clenched. "What she needs is truth." Kess's lips pressed together. "Truth is complicated." Ethan laughed once. No, it's not. You just don't like it. Kess's gaze slid toward the hallway leading to Margaret's wing. Where is the maid? Ethan's eyes narrowed. Why? Kess sighed, as if he hated that Ethan was forcing his hand. Because if she's still in this house, I'm obligated to report suspected abuse. Lena's voice came from down the hall. Report yourself, doctor. Kess's head turned. Lena stood near Margaret's door, posture straight. Kess's eyes narrowed slightly, the calm cracking just a fraction. Ms. Reyes, he said, you're putting yourself in serious legal danger. Lena didn't blink. I'm already in it. So are you. Kess smiled faintly, controlled. You don't know what you're talking about. Lena's voice stayed even. Then you won't mind if we check the medication. Kess's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Ethan caught it. Ethan stepped forward. We are checking it, he said. Kess's tone sharpened. Ethan, don't do this in front of staff. Ethan's eyes went cold. Staff is how it happened. Kess's gaze hardened. Your mother's medical care is not your plaything. Ethan's voice was low. And my mother is not your business asset. Kess's eyes narrowed. You're spiraling. Priya stepped forward, voice firm. Dr. Kess, you are trespassing. Leave now, or we call the police. Kess's calm mask slipped for the first time. Just a flash of contempt. You think you're in control because you have cameras, Kess said quietly. But cameras don't stop the law. Ethan's throat tightened. Neither does money, Kess continued, almost conversational. Courts love a narrative. Frail mother. Overworked son. Dangerous maid. Concerned doctor. Concerned attorney. He smiled faintly. It's clean. Ethan's skin prickled. You're confident. Kess's gaze slid toward Margaret's wing again. Because your mother cannot contradict it. Lena's voice cut in, sharp. She can. Kess looked at Lena like she was a fly. Blinking is not testimony. Lena's eyes didn't waver. It is when the person blinking is the one you've been drugging. Silence slammed into the foyer. Ethan's heart pounded. Kess's face remained composed, but his eyes went colder. Be careful, he said softly. Accusations like that. Check her medication, Lena repeated, louder now. Ethan moved toward the nurse station cabinet, where the meds were stored. It was locked, but Ethan had the key. He unlocked it, pulled out the organized packets. Priya stood beside him, watching. Ethan checked the labels, comparing them to the schedule on his app. Everything matched. Kess watched like a man watching children play with scissors. Lena stepped closer. Not those, she said. The injections. Ethan's head snapped up. Injections. Kess's tone was smooth. Margaret receives routine injections for muscle spasticity and anxiety management. Ethan's stomach twisted. Anxiety management. She becomes agitated, Kess said. It's normal. Ethan looked at Lena. Lena's eyes were hard. She becomes empty, Lena said. Not agitated. Empty. Ethan opened the lower compartment where refrigerated vials were kept. He pulled out a tray. Labels. Dosages. Dates. He didn't know enough to spot a lie. Priya leaned in, reading carefully. Her eyes narrowed. This vial, Priya said softly, tapping one label. Why is this in Margaret's name, but billed under a different provider code? Kess's gaze sharpened. Administrative. It happens. Priya didn't look up. It doesn't happen like that. Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he held the vial closer. The name was correct, Margaret Vale. The medication, midazolam. Ethan blinked. He knew that name. He'd seen it in hospital charts. Sedative. A strong one. Ethan's voice came out rough. Why is my mother getting a sedative at home? Kess's tone didn't change. To prevent distress. To prevent her from communicating, Lena said. Kess's eyes snapped to Lena, anger flashing. You don't understand medicine. Lena's voice was quiet but sharp. I understand sedation. I understand dosage. And I understand when someone uses it to make a person easier to handle. Ethan's stomach dropped. He looked at Priya. Is this legal? Priya's gaze was hard. Not without clear consent and documented need. Kess stepped closer, voice still calm, but the warmth was gone. Ethan, put that back. Ethan didn't move. Kess's eyes locked on Ethan. You are not a doctor. Ethan's voice was low. And you are not a god. Kess's jaw tightened. If you keep pushing, you will harm your mother. Ethan's throat tightened. You already did. For a second, something flickered across Kess's face. Not guilt. Calculation. He looked at the ceiling, at the hidden cameras, and his mouth tightened. Then he did something that surprised Ethan. He smiled. A real smile. Cold. You're recording. Kess said softly. Of course you are. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Kess turned slightly toward Priya. Counsel, he said. You're advising your client poorly. This is private medical information. Priya's voice was flat. Not when it's part of a criminal conspiracy. Kess's eyes glittered. Criminal, he repeated, amused. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped once, then held it up so Ethan could see. A live video feed. Not Ethan's cameras. A camera pointed into Margaret's room. Ethan's blood went cold. Kess's voice was almost gentle. You're not the only one who watches. Ethan stared at the screen. Margaret lay in bed, eyes open, and Lena stood beside her. Kess had been watching Lena too. Ethan's skin prickled with rage. How do you have that? Kess's smile didn't fade. Because I plan ahead. Priya's eyes narrowed. You installed cameras in a private room without consent. Kess shrugged. Consent is flexible when someone can't speak. Ethan's stomach churned. Kess's gaze slid to Ethan. Now, Kess said softly, imagine what a judge thinks when he sees you're made alone in your mother's room at night, unplugging the call button. Ethan's jaw clenched. Kess continued, voice smooth. Imagine what he thinks when he hears you hired hidden cameras to watch your staff. Control issues, paranoia, neglect, and then the maid, who has a documented incident, comes in and becomes your hero. He smiled slightly. It's not a good look. Ethan's heart hammered. Kess leaned closer, voice lowering. But you can avoid all of this. Let the petition proceed. Let Victor become guardian. Your mother will be managed. You'll be free to run your company. Everyone wins. Everyone. Except Margaret. Ethan's eyes flicked toward the hallway. Toward his mother. Margaret's eyes were open. Watching. Ethan felt something in his chest shift, hardening into something unfamiliar. Defiance. Ethan's voice was quiet, dangerous. You made a mistake. Kess's eyebrow lifted. Oh. Ethan's gaze was steady. You assumed my mother can't speak. Kess's smile was faint. She can't. Ethan's voice sharpened. She can. Just not in your language. Kess's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Ethan turned and walked toward Margaret's room. Kess's voice followed him, calm but edged. Ethan, don't be dramatic. Ethan didn't stop. He entered Margaret's room, the air cooler there, the faint scent of lavender and antiseptic mixing. Margaret's eyes locked on his. Ethan moved to her bedside, lowering his voice. Mom, he said, I need you to answer me. Margaret blinked once. Ethan swallowed hard. Did Dr. Kess give you medication that made you feel gone? Margaret blinked once. Ethan's throat tightened. Did Victor Sloan bring papers for you to sign? Margaret blinked once. Hard. Ethan's hands trembled. Did you want any of this? Margaret blinked twice, fast, furious. No. Ethan's breath shook. Priya stepped into the room, her voice soft. Mrs. Vale, can you spell your name using this? Priya held up a printed letter board she'd pulled from her bag. A to Z, arranged in rows and columns. Lena stepped forward, eyes focused. We can, she said quietly. Ethan looked at Lena. You can do it. Lena nodded once. Yes. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then do it. Right now. On camera. In a way no one can twist. Kess appeared in the doorway, calm but with a tension now under his skin. This is ridiculous, Kess said. Priya didn't look at him. It's evidence. Kess's smile was thin. Blinking at letters is not competence. Ethan turned to Kess, voice cold. Then you shouldn't be scared. Kess's eyes narrowed. Lena stood beside Margaret, holding the letter board. Her voice was gentle, steady. Row 1, Lena said softly. Blink once for row 1. twice for row 2, 3 times for row 3. Margaret blinked. Once. Lena traced her finger across row 1. A, B, C, D, E. Margaret blinked at C. Lena's finger tapped C. Ethan's throat tightened. They continued. Margaret blinked through letters slowly, the effort visible in the slight tremor of her eyelids, the tension around her eyes. And then, letter by letter, in front of Ethan, Priya, and the hidden cameras Ethan suddenly felt grateful for, Margaret spelled out 4 words that made Ethan's stomach drop. Help me. He drugs me. Silence flooded the room. Kess's face didn't crumple. It hardened. His eyes went cold. Ethan stared at the letters, then at his mother's eyes, filled with something that looked like exhaustion and fury and relief all at once. Priya's voice was steady, but her hands moved fast as she recorded everything, taking photos, capturing the board, capturing the blinks. This is enough to request emergency injunction, Priya said quietly, and enough to call APS and law enforcement. Kess's voice was calm, but it carried threat now. You're making a massive mistake. Ethan's gaze snapped to Kess, rage burning. Get out. Kess's jaw clenched. Ethan. Ethan stepped closer, voice low and lethal. Get out of my mother's room. Kess held his gaze for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed softly, not amused, almost sad. You think you've won because she blinked, Kess said quietly. But you've just made yourself a bigger problem. Ethan's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Kess's gaze slid past Ethan to Lena. It means people disappear when they interfere. Lena's posture stiffened. Ethan's blood ran cold. Because it wasn't just a threat. It was a reminder. Clarice. The cut badge. The man at the staff gate. Kess backed away, his voice still calm. I'll see you in court, he said again, and this time it sounded less like a warning and more like a promise. He turned and walked out. Ethan stood in the room, breath tight, and felt the ticking clock slam into existence. The hearing was in hours, and now he had proof, which meant whoever was behind this would stop at nothing to keep that proof from leaving the house. By the time the sun rose, the mansion felt different. The light coming through the tall windows was pale and cold, sliding across marble and glass like a spotlight. The staff moved quietly, but their eyes followed Ethan. Whispers stopped when he entered rooms. Doors closed softly behind him. Ethan used to think silence meant obedience. Now it felt like a net. Priya was on the phone with authorities, voice sharp, demanding. Ethan's security team doubled at every entrance. Codes were changed. Access revoked. And still, Ethan felt exposed. Because the threat wasn't outside the gates. It was inside the system. At 9 a.m., as Priya prepared to leave with the evidence, drives, recordings, copies of documents, Ethan's phone buzzed again. A text message from an unknown number. Look in the garage. Right now. Ethan stared at it, pulse spiking. Priya saw his face. What is it? Ethan showed her. Priya's eyes narrowed. Don't go alone. Ethan nodded once. Security. He moved fast down the hall. 2 guards behind him. The smell of engine oil hit him as he entered the garage. Clean. Controlled. The air cool and metallic. His cars sat lined up like trophies. Nothing looked wrong. Then Ethan saw it. A small black bag on the floor, tucked behind the rear tire of his SUV. Ethan's breath tightened. He stepped forward, heart pounding. The guards moved in front of him. One lifted the bag cautiously. Inside were papers, a phone, and an employee badge. Clarice's badge. Whole. Not cut. Ethan's stomach dropped. He grabbed the phone with trembling hands. It was locked, but taped to the back was a sticky note with 4 digits. A passcode. Ethan typed it in. The phone opened. A video was queued up, ready to play. Ethan's thumb hovered. Priya stepped closer, eyes sharp. Ethan hit play. The video started shaky, filmed from Clarice's perspective. She was hiding somewhere, her breathing fast, quiet. The camera pointed through a crack in a door into a room Ethan recognized with a jolt. His mother's room. But it was months ago. Victor Sloan stood beside Margaret's bed, smiling, holding papers. Dr. Kess stood near the medical cart, calm. Jeanette hovered, tense. Margaret's eyes were open, frantic. Victor's voice was clear. Just a formality, Maggie, Victor said smoothly. Your son's always traveling. This ensures your care is handled properly. Margaret's eyes blinked wildly. Victor's smile didn't shift. I know it's scary, but you trust me, don't you? Margaret's eyes blinked twice. No. Victor's smile tightened just a fraction. I'll take that as yes. Kes stepped forward with a syringe. Margaret's eyes widened. Clarice's breathing hitched behind the door. Jeanette's voice came, soft and rehearsed. It will help you relax. Margaret's eyes blinked furiously. Kes injected the syringe into Margaret's arm. Margaret's eyes fluttered. Her gaze went distant. Victor slid the papers onto a clipboard and lifted Margaret's limp hand. He pressed a pen into her fingers and guided it across the page, forging movement, creating a signature. Clarice's camera shook. Then the video cut off abruptly as Clarice moved, probably afraid she'd been heard. Ethan stood frozen. His throat felt tight. Priya's face was pale with controlled fury. That, Priya said quietly, is felony territory. Ethan's stomach churned. Who left this in my garage? Priya's eyes narrowed. Someone who wants you to win, or someone who wants you to walk into a trap. Ethan's mind raced. The text message, the bag, the phone, Clarice's evidence. It was too neat, too perfectly timed. Ethan's gaze snapped to the garage camera in the corner. Was someone watching him watch? Ethan's pulse hammered, and that's when everything shifted, because a different camera feed popped up on Ethan's phone, an alert from inside the house. Motion detected. Margaret's room. Ethan's blood went cold. He ran. The hallway stretched, polished floors reflecting his movement. His breath came sharp, loud in his ears. The guard sprinted behind him. As Ethan reached Margaret's wing, he heard it. Not a scream. A thud. A muffled sound, a struggle. Ethan slammed into the doorway. Inside, Lena was on the floor. One of the security guards, one Ethan recognized, a man named Rolf, had his knee pinning Lena's shoulder. Margaret's eyes were wide with terror. The call button was ripped out again, cords dangling. Ethan's heart hammered. What the hell is this? Rolf looked up, expression hard. Sir, she was trying to take Mrs. Vale. Ethan's stomach dropped. Take her where? Rolf tightened his grip on Lena. Out. She had a bag packed. She was. Lena's voice came strained, furious. He's lying. Ethan's eyes flicked to the corner. A duffel bag sat by the door. Ethan's mouth went dry. Rolf's voice was smooth. We caught her, sir. Just like the doctor warned. Ethan's head snapped to Lena. Her hair was loose now, braid undone. Her cheek was reddening where she'd hit the floor. But her eyes were sharp, burning. Look in the bag, Lena gasped. Ethan hesitated. Rolf's voice sharpened. Sir, don't. Ethan's jaw clenched. Move. Rolf didn't move. That was all Ethan needed. His voice turned lethal. Get off her. The guards behind Ethan stepped forward. Rolf's eyes flicked to them. For a second, something like panic flashed. He stood slowly, hands raised as if he was the victim. Ethan moved to the duffel bag and unzipped it. Inside were stacks of cash. Jewelry. Margaret's pearl brooch. Ethan's stomach dropped. Rolf exhaled like he'd won. See, Ethan's hands trembled as he stared at the contents. Lena's breathing was ragged. That's not mine, she said. He put it there. Rolf scoffed. Of course you'd say that. Ethan looked at Lena, then at the bag, then at his mother's eyes, wild, frantic. Margaret blinked. Once. Twice. Once. Ethan's throat tightened. The code. He grabbed the letter board from the bedside table with shaking hands, held it in front of Margaret. Mom, Ethan said, voice rough. Who did this? Margaret's eyes blinked. Once for row 1. Lena's voice came, steady despite pain. B, C, D. Margaret blinked at D. Ethan's chest tightened. D. Row 2. Margaret blinked once. Lena traced. F, G, H, I, J. Margaret blinked at I. Ethan's heart hammered. Row 3. Margaret blinked once. Lena traced. K, L, M, N, O. Margaret blinked at N. Ethan's stomach turned. D-I-N. Row 1 again. Margaret blinked once. Lena traced. B, C, D, E. Margaret blinked at D. D. Ethan stared. D-I-N-D. It didn't make sense. Lena's brow furrowed. Again, she said softly. Margaret blinked again, eyes wet. Row 2. Once. Lena traced. F, G, H, I, J. Margaret blinked at I. Row 3. Once. Lena traced. K, L, M, N, O. Margaret blinked at N. Row 4. Once. Lena traced. P, Q, R, S, T. Margaret blinked at R. Ethan's breath caught. D-I-N-D-I-N-R. Lena's eyes widened. No, she whispered. She's trying to spell a name, and we're off by one. Ethan's mind raced. Margaret blinked again, furious, trying. Lena adjusted. Row and column, she murmured, correcting herself. I'm doing it wrong. Ethan's stomach dropped. He realized something that made him sick. Lena wasn't being sloppy. She was shaken, hurt, rushed, and the system they relied on could break under pressure. Like everything else, Rolf watched with faint amusement, as if he knew the confusion would help him. Ethan's jaw clenched. He stepped close to Margaret and took her gaze in his. Mom, Ethan said softly, urgently. Look at me. Don't blink for letters. Just blink yes for one thing. Margaret's eyes locked on his. Ethan swallowed. Did Lena take this? Margaret didn't blink. Ethan's breath shook. Did Rolf take this? Margaret blinked once. Ethan's blood turned ice cold. Rolf's face shifted. Just a fraction. Ethan's voice went low. Get him. The guards moved instantly, grabbing Rolf's arms. Rolf struggled, anger flashing. Sir, you're making a mistake. Ethan stepped close, eyes hard. You planted that bag. Rolf's jaw clenched. I was protecting your family. Ethan's voice was cold. From who? The people trying to help. Rolf's eyes flicked toward the ceiling, toward cameras. His lips pressed together. Ethan suddenly understood. Rolf wasn't just a guard. He was an inside man, a hand that moved quietly through Ethan's controlled world. Ethan felt his stomach churn. Priya burst into the room, eyes sharp. What happened? Ethan pointed. He tried to frame Lena. Priya's gaze snapped to Rolf. Call the police now, she said to Ethan's guards. Financial crimes and assault. Rolf's face hardened. You think police will save you? He spat. Victor owns people. Ethan's blood chilled. Victor owned people. Clarice. Now Rolf. Ethan's chest tightened as he looked at Lena on the floor. She pushed herself up slowly, wincing, then looked at Ethan with eyes burning. Told you. Lena rasped. It's not the maid. Ethan's jaw clenched. The house was a battleground now, and the hearing was still coming. The next few hours moved like a storm. Police arrived, but not with sirens. Quiet official. Priya spoke to them like she'd been waiting her whole career for this moment. Evidence was handed over. Statements taken. Rolf was cuffed, face furious. But Ethan didn't feel relief, because Rolf's words echoed. Victor owns people. Ethan sat beside Margaret's bed while EMTs checked her vitals, while the officers walked through the room, photographing the ripped call button and the duffel bag. Margaret's eyes were wet. Ethan leaned close. I'm sorry, he whispered. His voice cracked. I should have listened sooner. Margaret blinked once, slow. Yes. Ethan swallowed hard. I'm going to stop them. Margaret's eyes held his. Then she blinked twice. No. Ethan frowned. No. Lena, sitting in the corner with an ice pack pressed to her cheek, watched Margaret carefully. She's saying, Lena murmured, don't just stop them. Expose them. Ethan's jaw tightened. Expose. That meant court. Public. Headlines. It meant dragging his mother's private suffering into daylight. Ethan hated that. He'd always protected her image, her dignity. But dignity had already been stolen in the dark. Priya returned to the room, eyes sharp. The hearing is still on, she said quietly. Victor's office isn't withdrawing. They'll argue this is chaos in the home. They'll say Margaret is unsafe with you. Ethan's stomach dropped. We have evidence. Priya nodded. We do. But we need Margaret's voice clearly, consistently. And we need to prove Lena isn't coaching. Ethan's mind raced. How? Priya's gaze sharpened. We bring in a neutral medical evaluator. Immediately. Someone the court respects. Ethan's jaw clenched. Can we? Priya's voice was firm. With money and pressure, yes. Ethan grabbed his phone and started dialing. An hour later, Dr. Simone Hart arrived. She wasn't like Kess. Simone Hart was blunt, mid-50s, hair in tight curls, eyes tired but sharp. She carried no leather bag. She carried a tablet and a stethoscope, and a look that said she didn't care who Ethan Vale was. She walked into Margaret's room and greeted her like a person, not a patient. Margaret, she said warmly. I'm Dr. Hart. I'm here to listen. Margaret's eyes fixed on her. Dr. Hart's gaze softened. Good. Blink once if you understand me. Margaret blinked once. Dr. Hart nodded. Blink twice if you don't. Margaret didn't. Ethan's chest tightened with relief. Dr. Hart turned to Priya. I'll document everything, she said. Then to Ethan. No one speaks for her. No coaching. You want the truth. Then shut up and let her work. Ethan swallowed and nodded. Dr. Hart spent 30 minutes running assessments, asking Margaret yes/no questions, observing her eye control, her response timing, the signs of sedation. Then Dr. Hart asked for medication records. Ethan handed them over. Dr. Hart's eyes narrowed as she scrolled. This dosage, she said quietly, tapping. This is excessive. Ethan's throat tightened. Dr. Hart looked up. Who prescribed this? Priya's voice was cold. Dr. Harlan Kess. Dr. Hart's lips pressed together. He's either incompetent or malicious. Ethan's jaw clenched. He's malicious. Dr. Hart nodded slowly. Then we treat this like a crime. She turned back to Margaret. Margaret, she said gently, has anyone been giving you medication that makes you feel like you can't think? Margaret blinked once. Hart. Dr. Hart nodded, documenting. Has anyone forced you to sign documents? Margaret blinked once, furious. Dr. Hart's gaze softened. Do you feel safe with your son? Margaret's eyes held Ethan's. She blinked once. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Dr. Hart turned to Priya. She's competent to communicate preferences, she said firmly. Court should not ignore this. Priya exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for days. The hearing began at 1 p.m. via emergency remote session, because Priya fought for it, and because Ethan made enough phone calls to make the courthouse receptionist sound afraid. Ethan sat at his dining table, laptop open. Priya sat beside him, posture straight. Dr. Hart was on screen as an expert. Lena sat off camera, out of sight deliberately, to avoid the narrative that she was influencing. Margaret was in her room with Dr. Hart and a court-appointed observer, an older woman with neutral eyes. Victor Sloan appeared on the video feed wearing his gray suit and friendly smile, like this was any other Tuesday. Dr. Kess appeared beside him, calm, confident. Ethan felt rage flare. Victor smiled at the camera. Your Honor, Victor began. We are deeply concerned about Mrs. Vale's safety. Recent events have demonstrated instability in the home. Staff have been assaulted. Medication has been mishandled. Priya's voice cut in, crisp. Objection. Mischaracterization. The judge, a stern woman with tired eyes, raised a hand. We'll hear facts, Mr. Sloan. Victor's smile didn't fade. Of course, he said smoothly. We can begin with the maid, Lena Reyes, who was found unplugging Mrs. Vale's emergency system and attempting to remove valuables from the home. Ethan's jaw clenched. Priya spoke calmly. We have video and eyewitness evidence that a security guard planted those items to frame Ms. Reyes. He is currently in police custody. Victor's smile faltered, just a fraction. Kess's eyes narrowed. Victor recovered quickly. That remains alleged. Priya didn't blink. Not alleged. Documented. She shared the footage. Rolf pinning Lena. The bag by the door. Margaret's blinks identifying Rolf. Victor's jaw tightened. The judge's eyes narrowed. Dr. Kess. The judge said, why was a sedative prescribed for home use at such dosage? Kess's voice was smooth. to manage anxiety and muscle spasms, Your Honor. Dr. Hart's voice came sharp. At that level, it manages consciousness. Kess's gaze flicked to Hart. Doctor, you weren't treating her. Dr. Hart's eyes were cold. I'm evaluating her now. And she shows signs consistent with oversedation. Ethan watched Kess's calm mask strain. Then Priya played Clarice's footage. Victor's smile vanished. The court saw Victor guiding Margaret's limp hand to sign. They saw Kess inject sedative. They heard Jeanette's voice. It will help you relax. Silence fell on the call. Victor's face was tight, pale. Kess's eyes were hard, calculating. The judge's voice was low. Mr. Sloan, she said, do you deny this footage? Victor's mouth opened, then closed. Priya's voice was calm, lethal. Clarice's phone was recovered this morning with this footage. We have chain of custody. We have police reports. We have forensic timestamps. Victor's voice came strained. Your Honor, this is a personal attack. The judge cut him off. This is evidence of fraud and abuse. Ethan's chest tightened. Kess leaned forward, voice smooth but with steel. Your Honor, he said, the footage is months old. The patient's condition has deteriorated. Emotional distress can cause false interpretations of care. Dr. Hart's voice was flat, then asked the patient. The judge's gaze shifted. Mrs. Vale, she said, voice gentler now. Can you communicate? The court-appointed observer in Margaret's room held up the letter board. Margaret's eyes were open, focused. The observer spoke carefully. Mrs. Vale will blink to indicate letters. Margaret blinked. Slow, controlled. And then she spelled, letter by letter, her words steady enough to break the narrative Victor tried to build. I am not safe with Kess. I did not sign. Lena helped me. Ethan listened now. Ethan felt his throat tighten, eyes burning. Victor's face was rigid. Kess's jaw clenched. The judge exhaled slowly. Emergency guardianship petition denied, she said. And I am ordering a criminal referral for investigation into fraud, elder abuse, and unlawful surveillance. Kess's eyes flashed. Unlawful surveillance. The judge's gaze was sharp. Yes, Dr. Kess, including the camera feed you apparently possessed. Ethan's stomach turned as he realized Kess's arrogance had exposed that too. Victor's mouth tightened. Your Honor. The judge raised a hand. This session is adjourned, she said. Mrs. Vale will remain under her son's care with immediate oversight from an independent medical provider until further order. The call ended. Ethan sat frozen, breath tight. Priya exhaled sharply. That, she said quietly, was the turning point. Ethan's hands trembled. He wanted to feel victory, but his mind went back to the text message. The bag in the garage. Clarice's phone. Someone left it there. Someone helped. Or set a trap. And now Victor and Kess were exposed, cornered. Cornered people don't accept defeat quietly. That night, the house went into lockdown again. Ethan hired additional security from a different firm, people Priya vetted personally. He changed every code, every password, every access point. Margaret was moved into a more secure room temporarily, one with reinforced locks and a direct emergency line monitored by the new security team. Lena stayed, despite Ethan offering to put her in a hotel under protection. I'm not leaving her, Lena said simply. Ethan watched Lena that evening as she adjusted Margaret's pillows, as she read from the worn paperback again. It was strange. After everything, Lena's gentleness felt louder than any argument. Ethan sat in the doorway and listened to the sound of pages turning, to the soft hum of machines, to the quiet breathing of the house. He felt something he wasn't used to feeling in his own home. Vulnerability. Around midnight, Ethan finally went to his office and opened the security feed. He watched the cameras like he always did. But now he wasn't just watching for threats. He was watching for patterns. He noticed how often Dr. Kess had visited without scheduling. How Jeanette stood between Margaret and the camera angles, blocking view at key moments. How Victor's visits always coincided with Kess's. And then Ethan noticed something else. A small blind spot. A corner near the back stairwell, where one camera angle ended and another began. A gap. Ethan's heart tightened. No system was perfect. And if Ethan could find a gap, so could Victor. Ethan stood and walked fast to the stairwell. The back corridor smelled faintly of laundry detergent and cold air. The lights were dim, motion activated. As Ethan approached the blind spot, the motion light flickered on. And there, in the shadowed corner, was a small device taped to the wall. A signal jammer. Ethan's blood turned cold. Someone had been inside his house again. Someone had planned to cut his cameras. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He grabbed the device, ripped it down. Footsteps sounded behind him. Ethan spun. A figure stood at the end of the corridor. Not Victor. Not Kess. Jeanette. Her scrubs were gone. She wore a dark hoodie. Hair down. Face tense and furious. Ethan's stomach dropped. Jeanette. Jeanette's eyes were hard. You ruined everything, she hissed. Ethan's jaw clenched. You drugged my mother. Jeanette's laugh was sharp. You think I did it for fun? I did it because your mother was a vault, and Victor had the key. Ethan's pulse hammered. Where's Clarice? Jeanette's eyes flickered, just a fraction. Ethan's blood chilled. Where is she? Jeanette swallowed, anger flashing. Gone, she spat. Like she should be. Ethan felt nausea rise. You're disgusting. Jeanette stepped forward, voice trembling with rage now. You don't know what disgusting is. She snapped. Disgusting is watching a woman with billions trapped in a bed while her son builds a company and pretends he's saving her. Disgusting is you installing cameras instead of sitting with her. Ethan's jaw clenched because the words cut close to something true. Jeanette's eyes glittered. Victor promised me a life, she said. He promised me out. You don't understand what it's like to work in a house like this, smelling your money every day like perfume you can't wear. Ethan's voice was cold. So you chose to abuse an old woman. Jeanette's face twisted. I chose to survive. Ethan took a slow step back, keeping distance, mind racing. His security team was posted near the front, not here. He reached into his pocket slowly, thumb hovering over his phone's panic button. Jeanette's eyes flicked to his hand. Don't, she warned. Ethan's pulse hammered. Jeanette stepped closer, voice low. Victor isn't finished, she said. He doesn't lose. He collects. And you just made yourself something he needs to erase. Ethan's blood went cold. You're threatening me. Jeanette's smile was thin and tired. I'm warning you. She glanced past Ethan, toward Margaret's wing. Ethan's throat tightened. Don't even think about it. Jeanette's eyes glittered. You think your new security can stop everything? Victor doesn't knock. Ethan's thumb pressed the panic button. A faint vibration. Jeanette's eyes widened. Ethan moved. He shoved past her, sprinting down the corridor. Jeanette lunged, grabbing his sleeve, nails digging into fabric. Ethan yanked free, heart pounding. He heard Jeanette running behind him. Then he heard the sound that made his stomach drop. A door opening. A soft creak. Margaret's wing. Ethan's blood turned ice cold. He sprinted, breath sharp. He burst into Margaret's room. Margaret lay in bed, eyes wide. And there, standing over her, was Victor Sloan. Victor's smile was gone. His face was tight, furious, ice cold as glass. In his hand was a syringe. Ethan froze. Victor's gaze snapped to Ethan, and for the first time, Ethan saw who Victor really was without the friendly laugh. A man who believed he owned outcomes. You, Victor snarled softly, have been very inconvenient. Ethan's voice came out rough. Step away from her. Victor's smile returned thin. Ethan, he said, voice almost tender. You should have stayed in your lane. Ethan's jaw clenched. I have evidence. Victor's eyes glittered. Evidence can burn. Jeanette appeared behind Ethan, breathless, eyes wild. Lena was nowhere in the room. Ethan's stomach dropped. Where's Lena? Victor's gaze flicked to the corner. Ethan followed it. Lena lay on the floor near the bathroom doorway, unconscious, a bruise swelling on her temple. Ethan's blood roared. Victor's voice was calm. She's alive, he said. For now. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. You touched her. Victor's smile was faint. She touched my money. Ethan's voice turned low, dangerous. Get out. Victor chuckled softly. No, Ethan, he said. This is where it ends. Victor lifted the syringe. Margaret's eyes were wild. Ethan's mind raced. He could lunge. But Victor was close to Margaret. One wrong move, and his mother could be hurt. Jeanette hovered by the door like a guard dog, eyes flicking between Ethan and Victor. Ethan's heart hammered. Then he remembered something. The cameras. Victor had brought a jammer. Ethan ripped it down. The cameras were live again. And Ethan's cloud backup was automatic. Everything was being recorded. Ethan's voice steadied, turning almost conversational. "You're doing this on camera." Victor's eyes narrowed. "You think I care?" Ethan's gaze was steady. "I think you do." Victor's jaw tightened. Ethan took a slow step closer, hands open, non-threatening. "Victor," Ethan said quietly, "you built a clean story for court. Doctor, nurse, attorney. You made it look like care." Victor's eyes glittered. "Care is a tool." Ethan nodded slowly. "And now you're standing over a paralyzed woman with a syringe," Ethan said. "That's not a tool. That's a confession." Victor's mouth tightened. "You talk too much." Ethan's voice was low. "So do you." Ethan's hand moved slowly toward the bedside drawer. Victor's eyes narrowed. "Don't." Ethan stopped. "I'm just getting her call button," he said softly, "so she can call for help." Victor's smile was sharp. "She doesn't need help." Ethan held his gaze. "She does," Ethan said, "and she's going to ask for it." Victor's eyes narrowed further. Ethan's heart pounded. Then Margaret blinked. Once. Twice. Once. Twice. Ethan caught it. The code. Ethan's voice was calm. "Mom," he said softly. "Do you want Victor to leave?" Margaret blinked twice. "No." Ethan's breath caught. Victor's smile flickered. "See," he murmured, amused. "She trusts me." Margaret blinked once. Then once again. Ethan's mind raced. Margaret wasn't saying she trusted Victor. She was saying something else. Ethan leaned closer, voice urgent. "Mom. 1 blink for yes, 2 for no. Do you want Victor to be arrested?" Margaret blinked once. "Yes." Ethan's chest tightened. Victor's smile vanished. Ethan's voice was low. "They're coming," he said. Victor's eyes flashed. "Not fast enough." Victor moved. He plunged toward Margaret's arm with a syringe. Ethan lunged. He grabbed Victor's wrist mid-air, muscles straining, the syringe wobbling. Victor's grip was strong, unexpectedly so. Years of shaking hands and signing papers didn't make him weak. They struggled, breath sharp. Jeanette moved behind Ethan, reaching for him. Ethan twisted, slammed his shoulder into Victor, knocking him off balance. The syringe flew from Victor's hand and clattered onto the floor, skidding under the bed. Victor's face twisted with rage. "You don't know what you're doing." Ethan's voice was a growl. "I'm saving my mother." Jeanette grabbed Ethan's arm, trying to pull him back. Ethan shoved her off. Jeanette stumbled, then lunged again. Ethan's mind raced, grasping for anything. His hand hit the bedside table. A glass of water. He grabbed it and flung it into Jeanette's face. Jeanette screamed, stumbling back, wiping her eyes. Victor surged forward again, fists clenched now, no longer pretending to be civilized. Ethan met him head-on, grabbing Victor's collar, slamming him back against the wall. Victor's breath came hard, face close. His eyes were wild with hatred. "You think she's your mother?" Victor hissed. "She's a bank account." Ethan's voice shook with fury. "She's a person." Victor laughed, sharp. "Not to me." Ethan's jaw clenched. Then a sound cut through the room. Footsteps. Heavy. Fast. New security burst in, weapons drawn. "Hands up," one shouted. Victor froze, chest heaving. Jeanette stood near the door, eyes wide, drenched. Ethan stepped back, breath shaking. Victor lifted his hand slowly, face twisting into a smile even now, like he still believed he could talk his way out. "You're making a mistake," Victor said smoothly. The security lead's voice was cold. "Tell it to the police." Then sirens, distant but closing, grew louder. Victor's smile finally cracked. Not fear. Rage. He turned his head toward Margaret and hissed, "You should have stayed quiet." Margaret's eyes burned. And then, in the most devastating moment of the night, Margaret did something Ethan didn't think she could do. A sound came from her throat. Not a word. A rough, broken attempted voice. A strangled breath that carried only one thing. Refusal. Victor's face twisted. The officers grabbed him, yanking his arms behind his back. Jeanette tried to run. They caught her too. Ethan stood beside the bed, chest heaving, hands shaking, and looked at his mother. Margaret's eyes were wet. Ethan leaned close, voice trembling. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm here." Margaret blinked once. Ethan felt tears rise, unexpected and hot. He turned to Lena on the floor. "She needs help," Ethan said, voice tight. An EMT who had arrived with police moved to Lena, checking her pulse, shining a light into her eyes. "She's alive," the EMT said. "Concussion likely. We need to get her to the hospital." Ethan's chest tightened. "Do it," he said. "Now." As Victor was dragged out, he twisted his head back toward Ethan. His smile was gone. His eyes were hollow with hatred. "This isn't over," Victor spat. Ethan's voice was low, steady. "It is for you." Victor's laugh was bitter. "Men like me don't end," he said. "We just shift." Ethan watched him disappear down the hallway. Then the house went quiet again. Not the controlled quiet Ethan was used to. A different quiet. One that came after something breaks, and you realize the silence was never safety. The next morning, sunlight filled Margaret's room, warm and golden, spilling across the bed like it was trying to erase the night. Margaret lay still, but her eyes looked clearer than they had in months. Dr. Hart had adjusted her medications, stripping away the sedatives, replacing them with what she actually needed. Her mind seemed to sharpen as the fog lifted. Ethan sat beside her with a cup of coffee that had gone cold. He didn't have his laptop open. He didn't have security feeds on his phone. He just sat. Lena was in the hospital, stable. Priya had called with updates. Victor and Jeanette were being held. Dr. Kess had been arrested on charges pending investigation, his calm mask finally meaningless in handcuffs. Clarice was still missing, but now it was a case, not a shrug. Ethan stared at his mother's hand, limp on the blanket. He spoke softly. "I thought cameras were enough." Margaret's eyes watched him. Ethan swallowed. "I thought if I could see everything, I could stop anything." Margaret blinked once. Ethan smiled faintly, bitter. "Yeah," he murmured. "Turns out I still missed you." Margaret's eyes softened, as much as they could. Ethan reached toward the nightstand where the hidden camera clock sat. He stared at it for a moment. Then he unplugged it. The red recording light went dark. The room didn't change. The machine still hummed. The house still stood. Money didn't vanish. But something in Ethan's chest loosened. He reached for Margaret's call button, new, reinforced, wired directly to security and medical response. He placed it where her fingers could reach if her therapy ever brought movement back. Then he leaned close and said, voice steady, "No more silence." Margaret blinked once. Later that afternoon, Lena returned, bruised, bandaged, walking carefully with the hospital bracelet still on her wrist because she refused to stay longer than necessary. Ethan met her in the hallway. She looked tired, eyes ringed with pain, but her posture was straight. "You should be resting," Ethan said. Lena's voice was quiet. "She needs me." Ethan nodded once. "I owe you." Lena's gaze was sharp. "You owe her," she corrected. Ethan swallowed. "You're right." He hesitated, then said, "Why did you do it? Why come here?" Lena's eyes flicked toward Margaret's room. Her voice softened. "Because she looked at me like I mattered," Lena said, even when she couldn't speak. Ethan's throat tightened. "You knew her before?" Lena hesitated. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. A photo, worn at the edges. A younger Margaret smiling, arm around a woman Ethan didn't recognize. Both of them laughing in sunlight. And beside them, a little girl with dark hair, Lena, standing between their legs, holding both their hands. Ethan stared, stunned. Lena's voice was low. "My mother," she said, tapping the other woman. "She worked for your family when I was small. Not as a maid. As a nurse. She helped your father when he was sick." Ethan's breath caught. "I don't remember." Lena nodded. "You were a teenager. You were busy leaving." Ethan swallowed hard. Lena's eyes shone, controlled. When my mother died, your mother sent money, Lena said. Not as charity. As promise. She wrote a letter. She said if I ever needed help, she would be there. Ethan's throat tightened. Did you? Lena's gaze dropped for a moment. Life is not gentle, she said softly. I needed work. I needed purpose. And then I saw her name on a care agency listing, and I thought she is alone. Trapped. And people will take from her. Ethan stared at the photo, chest tight. So you came back, he whispered. Lena nodded once. I came to repay, she said. Not to steal. Ethan's voice shook. And the folder. Lena's eyes hardened. I found it because I was looking, she said. Because I've seen what powerful people do to quiet people. Ethan swallowed hard. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. Lena's gaze held his. Belief isn't enough, she said. Action is. Ethan nodded. He stepped aside and let Lena into Margaret's room. Margaret's eyes widened when she saw Lena. Lena approached the bed carefully, then took Margaret's hand in both of hers. Margaret blinked once, slow, and a tear slid down the side of her face into her hair. Lena's voice was soft. I'm here, she murmured. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching, not through a screen, through a doorframe. That evening, Ethan sat with his mother and read from the worn paperback Lena had been using, stumbling over some lines, laughing quietly when he mispronounced a word, and then trying again. Margaret blinked slowly, like she was listening, like the words mattered. Ethan's phone buzzed once with an alert. He glanced at it. Then he flipped it over and ignored it. The last image of that chapter of their lives wasn't a courtroom, or handcuffs, or headlines. It was a quiet room filled with soft machine hum and warm lamplight. A mother who could finally be heard. A son who finally learned how to listen. And a maid, no, a woman, sitting close enough to be real, turning a page with steady hands.